Emisión.net.
Hello again and welcome to Letter from England, broadcasting for AC Press of the Spanish Evangelical Alliance. My name is Jonathan Dawson. This week we're looking at the grassroots strength of the Catholic Church. While the number of priests in training continues to fall, the Catholic Church in Spain is being sustained by 500,000 or so lay members through groups such as Opus Dei, the neo-catechumenal way, or kikos as they're commonly called, the Legion of Christ, Fellowship in Liberation, and the Work of Mary, amongst other groups. Although different one from another, these groups have certain features in common. They are lay movements. The average age of their members is much younger than the average of that for religious orders, which stands at about 60. They tend to be right-wing in orientation, and they constitute what critics see as a parallel church to the Roman edifice. It's not confined to Spain, of course, although the first two groups we've mentioned, Opus Dei and the kikos, were founded in Spain, and they are enjoying more and more support from the Vatican. Indeed, the kikos received the ultimate accolade recently when the Holy See approved the group's own statutes. These groups also seek to gain new adherents, especially in Latin America, where almost half the world's Catholics live. Now, the phenomenon of these groups is fairly recent, only about 30 years old, and owes much to the attempts by John Paul II to halt the rise of secularism in countries with a nominal Catholic majority. This led the Vatican to cast its eye on Spain as fertile territory prepared by Opus Dei, and upon Latin America, where Rome sought to halt the rapid growth of evangelical churches and, more discreetly, the work of liberation theologians. There was also the aim of straightening out, as they saw it, a church weakened by the openness of Vatican II. Well, if these movements received a boost with the ascension to Pope of Karol Wojtyła in 1978, an even greater one came 20 years later with the First International Congress of Church Movements, held in Rome. 56 groups were represented there, 7 of which received papal backing, including all those we've mentioned, with the exception of Opus Dei, which already enjoyed a direct line to the Vatican. Another feature of these groups is the desire to stand out from the rest of Catholicism, albeit in different ways. Opus Dei, for instance, is a personal prelature, part of the Catholic structure, whereas the other movements are grassroots groups within the Church, but with their own particular emphases. The kikos, for instance, are recognized by the Vatican as a post-baptismal catechumenal group, rather than a movement. But all these roads, at least, would still seem to lead to Rome. Now, accurate numbers for lay Catholic groups are not easy to come by, and those which exist are those given by the organizations themselves. Opus Dei, which is directly under papal jurisdiction, thereby neatly sidestepping the authority of diocesan bishops, claims to have about 30,000 members in Spain. The kikos say there are about 350,000 of them in Spain. Yet another characteristic of these groups is perhaps more surprising, and it's their gradual clericalization, with priests among the ranks of the Legion of Christ and Fellowship in Liberation. Luis Fermin Moreno, who works for the religious magazine Al Andar, says this process is creating a parallel clerical hierarchy. He says they start out as lay movements, but they've become clericalized. Some bishops cause them problems, and so they create their own structures, which is one of the reasons why the seminaries are empty. They are not religious orders, but in many ways are very similar. So are they after power? Well, Moreno answers wryly, yes, they want power, but not in the Church. He adds that they remind one a little of the first Christians, also of the faith of the new convert. They are very visible movements with charismatic leaders with good organizing ability. They are also young. They are a dynamic force within the Catholic Church, but have a tendency to take over. They can also be exclusivist, considering themselves to be the true Christians, and that causes bad feeling among other Catholics. Well, doctrinally, these movements are more spiritual than social, with a strong sense of sin. Moreno thinks they will remain strong for a time, but may eventually drive many people away from the Catholic Church. Abroad, they tend to be isolationist and authoritarian, based around charismatic leadership and a European model, which means that they operate completely independently from, and often in ignorance of, local church traditions. And even in Europe there is tension between these groups and other Catholics over who controls the different aspects of parish life, theology faculties and so forth. And yet, a new papal army is on the march. Thank you for listening to Letter from England, broadcasting each week at emission.net.
Emisión.net